What's up, everybody? My name is Tucker. In today's video, we're going to be talking about tanking in the NBA. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like rating on it. Check out my socials in the description as well. And let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so tanking is a bit of a controversial topic in the NBA. There are a handful of teams that come in every single season that know that they're not trying to compete for the postseason. They know that they are just there to develop their young players, lose a lot of games, and add more young players as assets moving forward. I think we all know what those teams are, right? Despite the fact that Houston is winning some games right now, they're a tanking team. Oklahoma City is a tanking team. Detroit, Orlando, these are teams that know that they don't have the talent to be competitive. They'd rather prioritize things that help them in the long term. They're playing the long game. And in this video, we're going to talk about 5 teams that didn't come into the year planning on tanking, but I would argue that they now should include that as part of their plan for a variety of different reasons. We're going to begin the list with absolutely the most controversial one, and it's the Denver Nuggets. The Nuggets came into the year as legitimate title contenders. The possibility of Jamal Murray returning later in the year, an opportunity for Michael Porter Jr. to step up and have a bigger offensive role, really grow and develop his game while Murray was out. The reigning MVP in Nikola Jokic, a couple of other, decent role guys, Aaron Gordon, guys like that. And their season just hasn't gone their way. And sometimes that happens. And what you don't want to do is you don't want to compound that into then limiting your options moving forward into the future. They're not going to be a contending team. If Michael Porter Jr. is not going to come back, if Jamal Murray is going to be someone that's going to be like rushed back late in the year, they're just not going to be that good. I mean, Aaron Gordon and obviously Jokic. Did I say Vucevic earlier? If I said Vucevic, I apologize. I meant Jokic. They're obviously incredible players, and you never really. It's definitely weird to have an MVP on your team and start thinking about tanking. And I don't mean rest guys and lose every game, but start thinking about maybe getting a lottery pick if you're the Denver Nuggets. Here's the reason why. They have a really awesome roster with those 4 guys that I mentioned that they've really invested in, a couple of other role players as well that they can look to re-sign moving forward. And they're still a very young team as well. Like, they can take some time a little bit here to really make sure that their window is where they want it to be. And if they get another lottery pick or they get a top 10 pick in this draft and add to this group, they're going to be an incredible team moving forward. And it's also just about health. Like, there's no reason to rush these guys back. There's no reason to rush MPJ back from back surgery or to rush Jamal Murray back from a lower leg injury or to put unnecessary mileage on Nikola Jokic. So I would advocate, again, you can't just like all out tank and not play anybody and start losing all these games when you have Jokic on the roster and he's in the MVP. But I would advocate that for the long-term future of the franchise, the best thing to do would be to prioritize the development of someone like Bones Highland and really try and make sure that he's growing and developing. Prioritize the health of these guys that are hurt and try and get that higher draft pick, add to this group, add it as a trade asset, because then you can go into next year. You've got Will Barton's expiring contract. You've got this pick that is either a player or you can trade it as a pick and add another piece to this roster. You've already got 4 really, really good guys, and you could set yourselves up to be like a true dynasty moving forward, considering the youth of the players they still have on the roster. It all still depends on the health of Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., but I would honestly advocate for that strategy if I was Denver. I know it's a tough pill to swallow, but still. Next up, a team we've been talking about a lot this week, and it is the Indiana Pacers, who look like they're moving towards a rebuild, which looks like the right strategy because as many, good players as they have on their roster, Sabonis, Turner, Brogdon, Duarte, Warren, they're not as young as you would think. LeVert's 27, Turner's 25, Sabonis is 25. Obviously, those guys are very, very good. But there's no like 20, 21-year-old that you're really excited here about if you're Indiana. And obviously, they're going to look to acquire some of those guys in trades and stuff with Sabonis and Turner and LeVert. But I think it's relatively shocking how barren things are in terms of a potential rebuild moving forward until they do make these trades that they're apparently planning on making to make the roster younger, to kind of look more towards the future and to rebuild. But even then, it would be really exciting if they were able to grab, one of the top rookies in the class. This is a very, very talented rookie class, especially at the top 2 or 3 picks. And if you're Indiana, as is the case with pretty much everybody we're going to be talking about in this video, with the exception of Denver, there's no championship ceiling here. There's no upside that points you towards a team that's going to be a real true contender moving forward. Pretty much no matter what moves you make, it's just not the way that the roster is made up. So if you can tank, you can get some younger assets, trade some of these guys. I think it's absolutely the right move. Next up now, Portland. We've also talked about them this week, made a whole video about them. It's going to be tough because Dame he said yesterday in an article, like, he doesn't want to leave. He wants to stay in Portland. He wants to continue trying to run it back. And so it would be tough to be the franchise that traded the loyal superstar, because there just aren't any really across the league. But at a certain point, you have to understand what's best for the long-term future of the franchise. And Dame wants this big extension, paying him, $50 million when he's 35. And at a certain point, you need to understand that, it comes down to what's best for the organization. And giving Damian Lillard a $50 million contract when he's 35, 36 years old to win 40 games just isn't what's best for the group long term. You've got Anthony Simons, you've got Nasir Little, guys you can move to get to future draft picks as well. And that's really what the plan should be about if you're Portland. It should be about the future. They had their opportunity. They had their chances to build around CJ, to build around Dame, to get good defensive wings, to add a nice big. And they never did it. They took some big swings by signing guys like Evan Turner in free agency, missed on that, never really could find another player to fit alongside Dame and CJ. And at a certain point, you just kind of have to admit that you missed. You lost. You didn't, make the correct moves. The front office and the organization as a whole was kind of in flux. This is the time to make a move, to adjust some things with this roster and really try and go find someone, especially with this draft class when you're looking at Chet Holmgren and Paolo Banchero, guys that are local to like the relative Portland area. How cool would that be to get one of those two guys in Portland? I think it's a strategy that they should absolutely be advocating for in that front office. It's time. It's time to move on if you're Portland. Next up, San Antonio. And this one I say with a little bit of a smile, because I do think that they've finally figured this out. For years and years and years, they were the team that just would not give in. They would not give in to this idea that you can't be mediocre. You can't just be the 8th seed. You can't be the 9th and 10th seed in the conference. It's the worst place to be. And this year, it appears as though they've finally given into that. They're prioritizing the younger players. They're trying to develop guys like DeJounte Murray into good players or better trade assets. They've got a couple of different guys they can move on this roster. They've got a ton of guards they're trying to figure out. And it just kind of seems like they've accepted, you know what? We need to just be the development Spurs for a year or two. We need to be a team that is just centered around the future. And it doesn't have to be 5 years into the future. It can be next year or 2 years from now, where you get some young guys and you add some players in free agency and you can go back to being a 45 and 50 win team, depending on who you bring in. But I just want one of these super high upside young players to end up in San Antonio. I wanted them to end up with Luka in that draft. I wanted them to trade up and get him. I want to see what it looks like when, we obviously saw what it looked like with Tim Duncan, but I want to see what it looks like when they get a top 5 pick in this current regime, and how they develop that player and instilling those winning habits in that guy. Because you could argue that, even with all the great development stories across the league, San Antonio is still one of the better places for a young player to grow and develop their game. And it would just be awesome to see one of these crazy good young college players end up in San Antonio and be allowed to grow and develop their game in that environment in San Antonio. And so this one isn't even like advocating for them to do it, because it kind of seems like they are. It kind of seems like they understand they're not a playoff team, but just the excitement that I would have if they were able to get one of these young players would be super fun. And then last up on the list is, again, maybe a little bit of a surprising one, the Toronto Raptors, because I made videos about Toronto before the season started about just not really knowing where they were at, not knowing what was going to happen with Siakam. They ended up with Scotty Barnes, who's looked awesome. They've got a lot of intriguing players on this roster, but they don't have a central guy. Siakam's not that guy. I don't think Scotty Barnes is that guy. They don't have a central player to really, truly build around. They've got a ton of great pieces that can fit around one guy, but they don't have the guy. And so I would advocate that this is a team that is one of the better coaching staffs in the league, one of the better development programs in the league. Try and find some value for Siakam. Let's just not be that good this year. We'll open up some cap space moving forward. Get a young guy that is central to the core of this group. And then Toronto's back up and running. I think they can be a really fun, exciting team with Van Fleet, OG, and Scotty Barnes, some of the other guys, Precious, that they have on the roster. But they need that one creator, the offensive focal point, the guy that everything runs through. And again, it's just like San Antonio. Like they've proven that they're so good at developing players that I would love to see them have the opportunity to not, develop OG Anunoby and not develop Van Vliet, who those guys have done an awesome job, no disrespect to them, but to develop players that have that crazy high upside would be super, super fun in Toronto. They're still a relatively playoff competitive team for the season, but just like every other team on this list, there's no upside here that puts them in the top 4 of their conference. There's no scenario in which they suddenly turn it around and they're 5 or 6 in the conference and like a potential conference finals contender. There just isn't. I know that Denver and Toronto, these are teams in Indiana and Portland and San Antonio, These are teams and organizations that have pride. These are teams that typically pride themselves on being competitive, on even when everybody else is tanking, they're the teams that are just there. They're always around. But at a certain point, it is time to reset. It is time to look towards the future of the roster, to get that one critical guy, or to open up some flexibility to get that guy in free agency, or to make a trade and improve your assets. And in every single one of these scenarios, I think that would be a better outcome, a better alternative, a better plan than what they've got going right now. Let me know down in the comment section below what other teams you guys think should be tanking to begin this season. But that is going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you guys very much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, be sure to check out the boxes on screen and subscribe to the channel for more videos just like this every single day. With all those things said, hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day, and I will see you all next time.